The desperate deal. The fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room cast harsh shadows across Camila Torres's face as she stared at the medical bill in her trembling hands. $47,000. The number seemed to mock her, each digit representing another month of her mother's chemotherapy, another chance at life that she couldn't afford. At 26, Camila had thought her freelance graphic design business was finally gaining momentum. She'd landed a few steady clients, moved her mother Rosa from their cramped apartment in Queens to a better neighborhood, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to dream of stability. Then came the diagnosis, stage 3 breast cancer. Insurance covered some treatments, but the experimental therapy that offered the best hope remained stubbornly out of reach. "Miss Torres?" The receptionist's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. "Your mother is asking for you." Camila folded the bill and tucked it into her worn leather purse, forcing a smile as she entered Rosa's room. Her mother lay propped against white pillows, her once thick black hair now hidden beneath a cheerful yellow scarf. "Mija, you look tired," Rosa said, her voice weak but warm. "You've been working too much." "I'm fine, Mama." Camila settled into the uncomfortable plastic chair beside the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The nurses here are angels." Rosa reached for her daughter's hand. "But I worry about the cost, Camila. Maybe we should consider the public hospital." "No." Camila's voice was firm. "You're getting the best care possible. I'll figure out the money." But as she walked through Manhattan's financial district, later that evening, delivering logo designs to a demanding client who would probably haggle over her already reduced rates, Camila wondered how many miracles she had left. The city lights blurred through her exhausted tears, and she barely noticed the sleek black sedan that pulled up beside her on the sidewalk. "Camila Torres?" She turned to find a man in an expensive suit stepping out of the car. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and piercing gray eyes, he looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes rather than approaching strangers on the street. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" she asked, instinctively stepping back. "Marcus Blackwood." He extended a manicured hand. "I have a business proposition that could solve both our problems." Camila had heard of Marcus Blackwood. Who hadn't? At 32, he'd built Blackwood Technologies into a billion-dollar empire, revolutionizing artificial intelligence and cloud computing. His face regularly graced business magazines, usually accompanied by articles about his ruthless negotiating tactics and carefully guarded private life. "I don't understand," she said, not taking his offered hand. "Get in the car and I'll explain everything. I promise you're in no danger. My driver can take you anywhere you'd like to go afterward." Something in his voice, perhaps the underlying note of desperation that matched her own, made her nod. The car's interior was all leather and polished wood, a stark contrast to her subway commute. Marcus poured himself a scotch from a built-in bar but didn't offer her one. "I need a wife," he said without preamble. "For exactly 1 year. It would be purely contractual. Separate bedrooms, no physical intimacy, minimal public appearances. In return, I'll pay off your mother's medical bills and provide you with a generous monthly stipend." Camila felt the world tilt. "How do you know about my mother?" "I know you're drowning in debt. I know you work 18-hour days and still can't make ends meet. I also know you're exactly what I need. Intelligent, presentable, and desperate enough to agree." The brutal honesty should have offended her, but Camila found herself leaning forward. "Why me? Why marriage?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "My grandfather's will contains certain stipulations regarding my inheritance. I need to be married by my 33rd birthday, which is in 6 weeks, or forfeit my controlling stake in the company." "So marry someone you actually love." "Love is a luxury I can't afford." His gray eyes met hers, cold and calculating. "This is business, Miss Torres, nothing more, nothing less. 1 year of your life in exchange for your mother's." The car had stopped outside her apartment building. Through the window she could see the chipped paint on the front door, the broken street light that had been flickering for months. Inside, Rosa was probably asleep, exhausted from another round of treatment they couldn't really afford. I need time to think. You have 24 hours. Marcus handed her an elegant business card. The offer expires tomorrow at midnight. As the sedan pulled away, Camilla stood on the sidewalk clutching the card, knowing her life had just taken a turn she never could have imagined. 1 year. 1 year of pretending to be someone else's wife, living in a world where money solved everything, where love was a luxury to be traded away. She looked up at her mother's darkened window and made her decision. Living in parallel worlds, the Blackwood mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut looked like something from a movie, all soaring columns and manicured hedges that stretched beyond what Camilla could see from the circular driveway. A housekeeper named Mrs. Chen answered the massive front door, her expression polite but distant. "Mr. Blackwood is in his study," she said, leading Camilla through rooms that felt more like museum displays than living spaces. "Your belongings arrived this morning. I've placed them in the guest wing as instructed. The guest wing, not the master bedroom, not even adjacent to it." The message was clear. This arrangement had boundaries. Marcus looked up from his desk when they entered his study, a room lined, floor to ceiling with leather-bound books that Camilla suspected he'd never read. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a white button-down, sleeves rolled up to reveal surprisingly strong forearms. Without the formal suit, he looked younger, almost approachable. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I signed the contract." Camilla placed the papers on his desk, trying not to think about how she'd cried while writing her signature. "My mother's first treatment is scheduled for Monday." "Good." He didn't look at the contract, just studied her face. "Mrs. Chen will show you to your room. We have dinner with my parents tomorrow night. They'll need to believe we're genuinely married." About that, Camilla twisted the simple gold band he'd provided, a ring that probably cost more than her rent, but felt cold against her finger. "What's our story? How did we meet?" "Through business. You designed the logo for one of my subsidiary companies. We kept in touch, started dating quietly to avoid media attention, got married in a small private ceremony." His tone was matter-of-fact, as if he'd rehearsed it. Simple, believable, minimal details to remember. "Right. Business." The word tasted bitter. "Should I know anything else about you? Favorite foods, pet peeves, childhood memories that a wife would know?" Something flickered in his gray eyes. "I don't like crowds. I take my coffee black. I haven't spoken to my sister Julia in 3 years." He paused. That should be sufficient. Camilla wanted to ask why he hadn't spoken to his sister, what had happened to make him build these walls around himself. But the professional distance in his voice stopped her. This was business, he'd made that clear. Her room was beautiful in an impersonal way. Cream walls, expensive furniture, a view of the perfectly landscaped gardens. It felt like a 5-star hotel room, comfortable but temporary. She unpacked her few belongings, hanging her simple dresses in a closet designed for someone with 10 times her wardrobe. Dinner that first night was served in a dining room meant for 12, with Camilla and Marcus sitting at opposite ends of the polished mahogany table. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the clink of silverware against china. "You don't have to eat down there," Marcus said finally. "This is your home now." "Is it?" Camilla looked around the formal room with its crystal chandelier and oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors. "Because it doesn't feel like home. It feels like I'm visiting a museum where I'm not allowed to touch anything." "What do you want me to say? That we should pretend to be something we're not?" "No, but we could at least try to be civil, maybe even friendly." She set down her fork. "Look, I know this is awkward for both of us, but we're going to be living under the same roof for a year. We don't have to be in love, but we could at least not act like strangers." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I work late most nights. I leave early in the morning. You probably won't see much of me." "Perfect," Camilla said, though it stung more than it should have. "I'll just be the invisible wife in the guest wing." That became their routine over the following weeks. Marcus disappeared before sunrise, returning well after dinner. Camilla explored the house, tried to make friends with Mrs. Chen, and worked. On her design projects in the sunroom that had the best light, they lived like polite roommates who happened to share a last name. The only time they interacted was when Marcus's world demanded the presence of Mrs. Blackwood. Company parties where Camilla smiled and made small talk about charity work she didn't do. Gallery openings where she stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, playing the role of the supportive wife. Theater premieres where photographers captured their image, the successful businessman and his mysterious bride. During these public appearances, Marcus transformed. His hand would find the small of her back, guiding her through crowds. He'd lean in to whisper something that looked intimate but was usually just practical. "The man in the blue suit is Senator Richardson," or "My mother is heading this way." But it was the small moments that confused her. Like when he noticed she'd started leaving books on the kitchen counter and quietly moved a comfortable reading chair into the sunroom. Or when she mentioned missing her mother's cooking and came home to find Mrs. Chen had prepared arroz con pollo, somehow knowing it was Rosa's recipe. "Did you tell her to make this?" Camilla asked him one rare evening when they both ended up in the kitchen at the same time. "Tell who to make what?" Marcus was loosening his tie, looking exhausted. "Mrs. Chen. The rice and chicken." "No." He poured himself a glass of water, not meeting her eyes. "Maybe she thought you'd like it." But Camilla had caught the slight flush on his neck the way he'd turned away too quickly. He had asked Mrs. Chen to make it, had somehow remembered her offhand comment about missing home-cooked meals. These glimpses of consideration, of the man beneath the businessman facade, made everything more complicated. It would have been easier if he'd remained the cold, calculating person from that first night in the car. Instead, she was beginning to see cracks in his carefully constructed walls, and despite herself, she wanted to know what lay behind them. Cracks in the facade. The call came at 3 a.m. Camilla's phone buzzed against the nightstand, jarring her from sleep. Rosa's name flashed on the screen, but it wasn't her mother's voice that greeted her. "Miss Torres, this is Dr. Martinez from Mercy General. Your mother asked me to call you. She's had a reaction to the new treatment protocol. Nothing life-threatening, but we'd like to keep her for observation." Camilla was already reaching for her clothes. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Make it 30, came a voice from her doorway. She spun around to find Marcus standing there, fully dressed despite the early hour. His hair was disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "You don't need to." "Yes, I do." His tone brooked no argument. "We're married, remember? This is what husbands do." The drive to the hospital passed in relative silence, Marcus navigating the empty streets with surprising familiarity. Camilla found herself stealing glances at his profile, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the steering wheel. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "My wife's mother is in the hospital. Of course I came." But it wasn't his public persona that walked beside her through the sterile hospital corridors. When they reached Rosa's room, Marcus hung back, allowing Camilla privacy with her mother. It was only when Rosa insisted on meeting "this husband of yours" that he stepped forward. "Mrs. Torres." He took Rosa's hand gently, his voice softer than Camilla had ever heard it. "How are you feeling?" "Better now that mi nieta is here." Rosa's eyes sparkled despite her exhaustion. "And please call me Rosa. We're family now, no?" Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Family. Camilla watched him process the word, saw the almost imperceptible softening around his eyes. "Rosa," he said carefully, "is there anything you need?" "Anything at all?" "Just take care of my Camilla. She works too hard, worries too much." "I will," Marcus promised, and Camilla was startled by how much he seemed to mean it. They stayed until Rosa fell asleep, Marcus eventually settling into the uncomfortable chair beside Camilla. At some point during the long night, she dozed off against his shoulder. She woke to find his jacket draped over her and his hand resting protectively on her arm. "Better?" he asked when her eyes fluttered open. "Thank you," she whispered, meaning more than just the jacket. The incident at the hospital seemed to shift something between them. Marcus started coming home earlier, joining Camilla for dinner in the smaller breakfast nook rather than the formal dining room. Their conversations remained surface level, but the sharp edges of their interactions had begun to soften. 2 weeks later, Marcus surprised her again. "I need you to come with me to something tomorrow night," he said over breakfast, not looking up from his tablet. "Another company function?" "A charity gala. The Blackwood Foundation hosts it annually, pediatric cancer research. Camilla studied his profile. That's important work. It was my grandfather's cause. Marcus's voice was carefully neutral. He lost a grandson to leukemia before I was born. My cousin James. The foundation was established in his memory. I didn't know you had a cousin who... Most people don't. Marcus finally looked at her. It's not exactly good cocktail party conversation. But Camilla heard what he wasn't saying, that this gala meant something to him beyond business obligation. What do you need me to do? Just be yourself. The foundation could use someone with your warmth. The compliment, small as it was, sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. The grand halls transformed into an elegant wonderland of soft lighting and flowing fabric. Camilla wore a dress Marcus had insisted on buying, deep blue silk that made her eyes sparkle and her confidence soar. You look beautiful, he said when she came downstairs, and for once there was no audience to perform for. The evening began like their other public appearances, Marcus's hand at her back as they navigated conversations with donors and board members. But when they reached the children's ward presentation, something changed. Dr. Rebecca Foster, the foundation's medical director, was explaining their latest research breakthrough when she spotted Marcus. Marcus, I'm so glad you're here. And you must be Camilla, I've heard wonderful things. Dr. Foster runs our clinical trials, Marcus explained. She's the reason we've been able to fund 3 new treatment protocols this year. Actually, Dr. Foster smiled, we have Marcus to thank for that. He's been incredibly hands-on with the foundation work, more involved than his grandfather ever was, if I'm being honest. Camilla looked at Marcus with new eyes. This wasn't just inherited obligation. This was personal. Later, as they watched a video presentation about children who'd benefited from the foundation's work, Camilla noticed Marcus's hands clenched tightly in his lap. One particular story, a 7-year-old boy who'd beaten acute lymphoblastic leukemia, brought tears to her eyes. But when she glanced at Marcus, his jaw was rigid with emotion he was fighting to contain. Without thinking, she reached over and covered his hand with hers. He didn't pull away. Would you like to meet some of the families? Dr. Foster asked after the presentation. We have several here tonight whose children have participated in our programs. That's not necessary, Marcus began, but Camilla squeezed his hand. We'd love to, she said. For the next hour, Marcus transformed again, but this time into someone Camilla barely recognized. He listened intently as parents shared their stories, asked thoughtful questions about treatments, and somehow managed to make each child they met feel like the most important person in the room. Mr. Blackwood, one mother said, tears in her eyes, I don't know how to thank you. The trial you funded saved my daughter's life. Thank Dr. Foster and her team, Marcus replied. I just provide the resources. They do the real work. But Camilla saw how he looked at the little girl, healthy and laughing as she played with other children nearby. She saw the way he excused himself when the emotion became too much, stepping onto a quiet balcony overlooking Central Park. She found him there a few minutes later, his hands gripping the stone railing. That was incredible, she said softly. It's not enough, his voice was rough. All that money, all those resources, and kids are still dying. James died because the treatments didn't exist yet, and now... He ran a hand through his hair. Sometimes I think I'm just throwing money at guilt. James was your cousin? Marcus nodded. My best friend, really. We were the same age, spent every summer together at my grandfather's house in the Hamptons. When he got sick, I promised him we'd have adventures when he got better. We'd sail around the world, climb mountains, do all the things 8-year-olds dream about. His voice cracked slightly.
He died believing we'd do those things together. Camilla felt her heart break a little.
Marcus, the foundation isn't charity for me, Camilla. It's a promise I'm still trying to keep. Without thinking, she moved closer, her hand finding his arm. James would be proud of what you've built. Those children tonight, they get to have the adventures he couldn't because of what you've done. Marcus turned to look at her then, really look at her, and something passed between them that had nothing to do with contracts or convenience. For a moment, she forgot they were pretending. For a moment, it felt real. Thank you, he said quietly, for coming tonight, for understanding. Thank you for letting me see this side of you. They stood there in the soft glow of the city lights, closer than they'd been since their wedding photos. And Camilla realized with startling clarity that the walls around Marcus's heart weren't just protective. They were prison bars he'd built himself. And maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to find the key. When hearts collide. Marcus collapsed on a Tuesday morning in mid-November, right there in his study while reviewing quarterly reports. Mrs. Chen found him slumped over his desk, burning with fever and barely conscious. By the time Camilla arrived at Greenwich Hospital, he was hooked up to IV lines and looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. Pneumonia, Dr. Williams explained, probably brought on by exhaustion and stress. His assistant says he's been working 18-hour days for weeks. When did you last see him eat a proper meal? Camilla couldn't answer because she realized with a shock that she didn't know. Despite living in the same house, despite their growing closeness after the gala, Marcus had retreated into his work with an intensity that bordered on self-destruction. He'll need care at home, the doctor continued. Medication, rest, someone to make sure he actually takes time to recover. I'll take care of him, Camilla said without hesitation. Marcus was groggy from medication when she brought him home the next day, but lucid enough to protest. You don't have to stay. Mrs. Chen can handle everything. Mrs. Chen is not your wife, Camilla said firmly, helping him up the stairs to his bedroom, the first time she'd ever been inside the master suite. And you're not arguing your way out of this. His bedroom was like the rest of the house, expensive and impersonal, all dark wood and neutral colors. But there were small details that felt uniquely his. A worn leather chair by the window where he apparently did his reading, a small collection of vintage watches on the dresser, and on his nightstand, a faded photograph of two young boys on a sailboat. Marcus and James, she realized. You're staring, Marcus said weakly from the bed. Just trying to understand you. Camilla adjusted his pillows, noting how the fever had left his skin pale and drawn. Why do you push yourself so hard? Because stopping means thinking. And thinking means remembering things I'd rather forget. Like James? Among other things. His eyes drifted closed. My father's disappointment. Julia's last words to me. The way my ex-fiancée looked at me when she found out about the inheritance clause. Camilla's hand stilled. Ex-fiancée? Victoria. We were engaged 2 years ago. I thought I loved her, thought she loved me. Marcus's laugh was bitter. She loved the idea of being a billionaire's wife. When she found out I'd lose everything if I didn't marry by 33, she gave me an ultimatum. Marry her immediately, or lose her forever. What did you do? I chose my pride. Told her if she really loved me, the timing wouldn't matter. He opened his eyes, meeting hers. She walked out the next day. Took half our social circle with her, along with their opinions about my emotional unavailability. Camilla felt a surge of anger toward this Victoria, whoever she was. She was an idiot. Was she? Look at what I've done to you, Camilla. Bought myself a wife because I was too damaged to find real love. You didn't buy me, Camilla said quietly. You offered me a choice when I had none. There's a difference. Over the next few days, as Marcus slowly recovered, their careful boundaries dissolved entirely. Camilla moved into the chair by his window, working on her laptop while keeping an eye on him. She brought him homemade soup, argued with him about taking his medication, and gradually coaxed stories from him about his childhood, his travels, his dreams of sailing around the world, the same dream he'd shared with James. Tell me about Julia, she said one evening as she was checking his temperature. Marcus's expression darkened. My sister has very strong opinions about the choices I make. What kind of opinions? The kind that end with her calling me a cold, calculating bastard who ruins everything he touches. The words came out flat, rehearsed. Her exact words, in fact. What happened? Marcus was quiet for so long that Camilla thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, he said she was dating someone. A guy named David who worked for one of my competitors. Nice enough, seemed to make her happy. Then I found out he was feeding information about our family, our business to his company. Personal things about Julia, private conversations. Oh no. I confronted him, gave him a choice. End things with Julia clean, or I'd expose what he'd been doing and make sure he never worked in tech again. Marcus's hands clenched the blanket. I thought I was protecting her. But Julia didn't see it that way. Julia saw it as her controlling older brother destroying her relationship because I couldn't stand to see her happy. She accused me of being jealous, of thinking no one could love our family without an agenda. His voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe she was right. Camilla set down the thermometer and sat on the edge of the bed. Marcus, look at me. He met her eyes reluctantly. You are not cold. You are not calculating. You're careful and you're protective and you've been hurt by people who didn't deserve your trust. But that doesn't make you unlovable. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, hope, fear, all tangled together. Camilla, I mean it. She reached for his hand, threading their fingers together. These past few months getting to know you, the real you, not the businessman facade, it's been... She paused, searching for the right words. You make me laugh. You listen when I talk about my mother, about my work. You remember things that matter to me. You're kind to Mrs. Chen and generous with your foundation, and you tip the coffee shop girl extra, because you notice she's working 2 jobs to pay for college. You've been watching me tip baristas? I've been watching you, period. The confession hung between them, and what I see is someone worth knowing, worth caring about. Marcus sat up slowly, his face inches from hers. This isn't part of the contract. No, Camilla whispered. It isn't. We agreed this was just business. I know. If we do this, if we cross this line, everything changes. I know that too. For a moment, they stayed frozen like that, balanced on the edge of something that could either save them both or destroy everything they'd built. Then Marcus lifted his free hand to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheek. I don't want to hurt you, he said. Then don't. When he kissed her, it was nothing like their staged kiss at the wedding. This was soft and tentative and real, full of all the words they hadn't said and all the feelings they'd been afraid to acknowledge. When they broke apart, Camilla could see her own wonder reflected in his eyes. This complicates things, Marcus said, but he was smiling. Good, Camilla replied. Simple was overrated anyway. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall, blanketing the world in quiet possibility. Inside, 2 people who'd entered a contract as strangers discovered they'd found something neither of them had been looking for. A love that was completely, beautifully real. But even as Camilla curled up in Marcus's arms that night, listening to his steady heartbeat, she couldn't shake the feeling that their happiness was fragile, because somewhere in the back of her mind, she remembered that their contract had an expiration date, and people who'd hurt Marcus before had ways of finding his vulnerabilities. She was about to become the biggest vulnerability of all, beyond the contract. The photograph arrived on a snowy February morning, slipped under the front door like a poison pen letter. Camilla found it when she came downstairs for breakfast, her heart still light from the past few months of genuine happiness with Marcus. The image was grainy but clear enough. Marcus and her on the hospital balcony the night of the gala, his hand covering hers, their faces close together in intimate conversation. Written across the bottom in red ink were the words, Contract marriage exposed. Full story breaks tomorrow unless... There was no signature, but Camilla didn't need one. The familiar handwriting, the vindictive tone. She'd seen enough of Victoria's social media posts during her research on Marcus to recognize the style. Camilla? What's wrong? Marcus appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him since they'd met. The past 3 months had changed him, softened the hard edges, brought warmth to his eyes. She handed him the photograph without a word. Marcus's face went cold as he read the message. Victoria, your ex-fiancée? How did she get this photo? She has friends everywhere. Probably hired someone to follow us. Marcus crumpled the photo in his fist. The question is what she wants. The answer came an hour later in the form of a phone call. Hello, Marcus. Victoria's voice was sickeningly sweet through the speaker. Did you enjoy my little gift? What do you want, Victoria? What I've always wanted, you. This pathetic marriage of convenience proves you couldn't find real love after me. So here's my offer. Divorce your little charity case. Marry me like you should have done 2 years ago, and I'll make sure this story never sees daylight. Camilla felt her world tilt. She watched Marcus's face, searching for any sign of what he was thinking. And if I refuse? Marcus asked. Then by tomorrow morning every major news outlet will have the full story. Your fake marriage, the inheritance clause, even some rather unflattering details about your wife's financial desperation. Imagine what that will do to your precious reputation, your company's stock price, your foundation's credibility. The line went dead. Marcus sat in silence for several minutes, staring at his phone. When he finally looked up, Camilla saw something she'd never seen in his eyes before. Defeat. "She's right," he said quietly. "If this story breaks, it'll destroy everything. The foundation, the company, even your reputation will be ruined by association. So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should consider—" "No." Camilla's voice was sharp. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. Camilla, be practical. You never signed up for this kind of scrutiny. Your mother's treatments are covered. You have enough money saved now to start over somewhere else. Stop." She stood up, pacing to the window. "Just stop. Is that really what you think of me? That I'd run the moment things got difficult? I think you're too good for this mess." "Too good for me." Camilla spun around to face him. "That's not your choice to make, Marcus. We're supposed to be partners now. Real partners. That means we face problems together. This isn't your problem. Like hell it isn't." She moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to look at her. "I love you, you idiot. Not your money, not your status, not what you can give me. You. The man who remembers how I take my coffee and worries about children he's never met and reads to me when I can't sleep because of stress about my mother." Marcus's eyes filled with something that looked like wonder and terror combined. "You love me? Did you think I was kissing you for practice these past few months? I thought—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I thought maybe it was gratitude. Or pity. Marcus Blackwood, you are the smartest, most infuriating, most wonderful man I've ever known. And if you think I'm going to let some bitter ex-fiancé destroy what we have, then you clearly don't know me at all." Before he could respond, Camilla was moving, pulling out her laptop and opening her design software. "What are you doing?" Fighting back, her fingers flew over the keyboard. "Victoria wants to control the narrative? Fine. Let's give her a story she wasn't expecting." For the next 6 hours, Camilla worked with an intensity Marcus had never seen. She designed graphics, wrote copy, created a multimedia presentation that told their story, the real story. Not a contract marriage between strangers, but the journey of two people who'd found something neither had been looking for. "Help me," she said as the afternoon light faded. "Help me show the world who we really are." Marcus looked at her screens, images of them at the hospital with Rosa, at the charity gala with the children, candid moments Mrs. Chen had captured around the house when they'd stopped pretending to be strangers. "The inheritance clause," he said slowly. People will think your grandfather was a smart man who knew love when he saw it, even if it took you a while to recognize it yourself." Camilla pulled up the final slide, a photo of them from just last week, laughing over breakfast, completely unguarded. "This is us, Marcus. This is real, and I'm not ashamed of how we started because look where we ended up." That evening, before Victoria could release her story, Marcus and Camilla went public with theirs, not through a press release or a formal statement, but through the Foundation's social media channels with a simple video of them sitting together in their kitchen. "A year ago," Marcus began, looking directly into the camera, "I needed a wife to fulfill the terms of my grandfather's will. Camilla needed financial help for her mother's medical treatment. What started as a business arrangement became something neither of us expected. We fell in love," Camilla continued, her hand finding his. "Not because of money or contracts or expectations, but because sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead you exactly where you need to be. There will be people who question our motives," Marcus said, "who think this diminishes what we have. But love doesn't always arrive the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes disguised as convenience, as necessity, as the answer to a problem we didn't know how to solve. Our marriage may have started as a contract," Camilla concluded, "but it became a choice we make every day. To trust each other, to support each other, to build something real together." The video ended with them simply looking at each other, and even through the screen, their love was unmistakable. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support flooded in from Foundation donors, company employees, even strangers who were moved by their honesty. Victoria's threatened exposé fell flat in the face of their openness, her vindictive narrative no match for their authentic truth. 3 days later, Marcus found Camilla in the sunroom, sketching designs for a new project. "Regrets?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her reading nook. "About Victoria? About going public? About any of it? All of it. This isn't the quiet life you signed up for." Camilla set down her pencil and turned to face him fully. Marcus, do you remember what you said to me that night in the car? That love was a luxury you couldn't afford. I remember. You were wrong. Love isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. It's the thing that makes everything else worthwhile. She reached for his hands. I don't regret signing that contract because it brought me to you. But I don't need a contract anymore to stay. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded paper. Their original marriage contract. Good, he said, tearing it in half, because our year is up next week and I have a better offer. Oh, really? Marry me, Marcus said, dropping to one knee beside her chair. Not for money or inheritances or business arrangements. Marry me because I love you, because you make me brave enough to hope, because I want to spend the rest of my life earning the gift of your trust. This time, when Camilla said yes, there were no contracts involved, just two hearts that had found their way home to each other, against all odds and beyond all expectations. Later that evening, as they called Rosa to share the news of their real engagement, Camilla reflected on the strange journey that had brought them together. A year ago, she'd signed a contract out of desperation. Now she was choosing love out of joy. Sometimes the most practical arrangements became the most impractical feelings. And sometimes, just sometimes, that was exactly how it was supposed to be. The contract had ended, but their story was just beginning.